I
Yeah.
just want to start by introducing a good friend of mine and also someone that I used to work together. David is our guest today. David, say hi.
Y- Yeah, Leo and Brian, I really appreciate the opportunity to come on today.
That's awesome. David, so I didn't finish what I was telling Brian earlier about why I think you were one of the smartest person I know. So, Brian, so I was sitting in this room with what Dr. Chan and Dr.
Mhm.
McGriffin. Did I say that last name right?
McLaughlin, yeah.
So,
Uh-huh.
yeah, a bunch of doctors, right? And they call this the Oklahoma War Zone Strategy Room. Basically, all the doctors are all sitting together. They review patients' case together, right? So they really
Yes.
exchanging ideas, expertise, and David sounds just like a doctor. Like he literally would ask very, very technical questions and like provides at times really sounding advice. And if I didn't know you were not a doctor, David, I would like not thought like you were actually a doctor, a marketer. So will you kind of
Well,
give us a little bit of
yeah.
like idea on what you were doing at
Yeah, that's
Oklahoma?
funny. So I've worked in oncology for about 20 years, and when you spend that much time in a field, you start to pick up some of the lingo. So I can fake it for about an hour or two. If I walked in a room with a patient, I think I could throw out fancy terms like stage three and BRCA negative and or radiobiological effective dose and your gray of like I could throw the terms out just from hearing them over 20 years, but I don't think I'm licensed to treat patients.
Well, you're very humble, David. I know you have a lot of knowledge about a field that I know you personally are very passionate about, and I'm
Yeah.
very grateful that I actually get to get involved in working with you and Heather throughout that process. And so today we are going to really dive into this field and kind of give people a little bit more ideas about what it's all about marketing and what it is marketing like finding patients and when so much is involved.
Yeah, I think it's important to I'll give a little bit of an overview of the facility. So we do
Hmm.
proton therapy at our cancer center. Proton therapy literally is a treatment where we're using high energy beams of proton particles targeted precisely at cancer cells to kill those cancer cells. So we actually have a particle accelerator
So,
at our cancer center. Yeah. And
David,
the,
will
so the,
you
the,
kind of explain
the,
to Brian a little
yeah.
bit about like what's the difference between proton and radiation treatment in general that most people are
Yeah.
familiar with?
So about 50% of patients who are diagnosed with cancer are going to get some type of radiation going through cancer treatment. A lot of times that is X-ray based radiation. So Ryan, you may have had a dental X-ray at some point, or if you broke a bone, you had an X-ray. And the way that those images work is you're actually delivering X-rays into the body, and X-rays don't have a mass or a charge, and so they actually will travel through the body. Some of them get absorbed by bones, and then what hits the film on the other side of the source is what creates that image. Well, when you're treating cancer with X-rays, you're delivering hundreds of thousands of times the amount of X-rays that you would get for like a dental X-ray. So it's a lot of radiation. And if you think about getting an X-ray, if the X-ray is in an area where it might hit your chest, as an example, you'll actually wear a lead apron that's protecting your heart and your lungs and your esophagus from exposure to radiation. Well, then imagine that again times 100,000, 200,000, 300,000. That radiation can do a lot of damage to healthy cells and critical structures like the heart or the lungs. So with protons, it's a type of radiation where the proton particle has a mass and a charge. And so we can actually stop protons inside cancer cells. So like for left-sided breast cancer, let's say you're delivering radiation to that chest wall area where there's cancer, we can have that beam of protons stop inside the treatment field before it ever gets to the heart, which you could never do with X-rays. And so, again, using the breast cancer patient as an example, a breast cancer patient will oftentimes get less radiation exposure to the heart, which is going to reduce the risk of heart complications down the road. Now, because we have all of this really complicated equipment and we have a particle accelerator, All of that is really, really expensive. So like the equipment at our facility in Oklahoma City costs $65 million. An X-ray radiation machine costs $3 or $4 million. And so
David,
because
were
of
you
that,
explaining to
yeah.
Brian like sort of how? Just give him. We'll put some visual here on the post production as well. But will you kind of give Brian some idea on how many stories like the whole thing actually look like? It's
Well,
it's
just
like
a
literally
yeah,
like a mothership machine. It's huge.
yeah, just a couple of like kind of fun facts. So the one of the treatment rooms, and we call it the gantry room, and it's got a beam or it's got infrastructure that allows the beam of protons to be rotated 360 degrees around the patient. That room, the equipment in there is 3 stories tall. So
Wow.
it's 36 feet tall, and that frame that's rotating the beam can rotate around the patient 360 degrees. So we're literally rotating something that's 3 stories tall with millimeter precision. So every single time we stop it, it's stopping in this perfect circle within a couple millimeters margin of error. The cyclotron, or the particle accelerator, weighs 200 tons, which is the weight of a 747 airplane fully loaded, or about 100 mid-sized cars. So it's really, really heavy. And that particle accelerator sits in a bunker with 16-foot thick concrete walls. So, we probably have a wingspan of about 6 feet. So imagine almost three of our wingspans, and that's just literally all concrete, all the way around this big particle accelerator. So yeah, there's a lot of infrastructure that goes into
It
building
looks
a
very
proton center.
futuristic when you are inside
Yeah,
one of those treatment because the light,
yeah,
especially with the purple light stuff going on. Yeah, I will
yeah.
put a
Wow.
visual here so our listeners can actually see that. I actually one of the series, Brian, what I was kind of get to do was because we want to give people ideas on how it works, so we shoot a lot of videos inside the treatment and also explaining on how it works. It's really breathtaking and how like cool it looks as well.
It's
Yeah,
a
that's
really
awesome.
neat, exciting place to go to work every day.
And do you
I
guys have like multiple of these like particle accelerators, or is it just like there's one main one that pretty much anyone who receives the treatment is going into that kind of same room?
So we have one particle accelerator that actually feeds 4 rooms. So there's
Okay.
4 branches that come off of this particle accelerator. So it's one source of protons going to 4 different treatment rooms. And there's about 45 proton centers around the country. When our center opened in Oklahoma City, we were actually just the 6th proton center in the country. That was in 2009. But there's about 45 proton centers today, which is, to kind of put that in perspective, there's probably about 3,000 traditional X-ray based radiation facilities. So you're talking about, uh, multiple X-ray radiation facilities for every one proton center.
Wow. Yeah, and one question I had too, just not knowing the field too well, is how new or how old is proton therapy? I mean, has it been around 20, 30, 40 years, or is it just coming around in the last like 10 years or so?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the technology for proton therapy, a lot of it actually was developed on the Manhattan Project. So if you remember the movie Oppenheimer, that's the movie about the development of the atomic bomb, and a lot of that work happened in Los Alamos. There was a physicist working on that project, and his name was Robert Wilson. And he was a particle acceleration expert. Like he was a wizard with cyclotrons, is the type of particle accelerator that we use. And the story is that he was a Quaker and had pacifist upbringings, and so he initially resisted joining the Manhattan Project, but his wife was Jewish. And so as he started to hear these stories that were coming out of Nazi Germany about the persecution of the Jews, he said, "You know what? Maybe I'm Quaker and I'm against war, but I have to do something to stop this madman that's taking over Europe and persecuting the Jews." And so he agreed to join the Manhattan Project. But then when it got to the point where they actually detonated the first bomb it was the Trinity test out in New Mexico, he recalled, I was sitting there and I was watching this detonation, and he said, I realized just the potential for devastation and destruction that I had been a part of creating. And so he said in 1945, at that moment, he committed his life to looking for altruistic uses for the technology that they had developed on the Manhattan Project. And in 1946, he wrote a paper called The Radiological Use of Fast Protons. And in that paper, he described how protons could be used to treat cancer. So he's the guy that kind of synthesized, and there were other people that had been talking about it or kind of tossed around ideas, but he's really the guy that put it all on paper for the first time. And what he described in 1946 is still what we do today. The first patient was then treated in 1954 at a research laboratory in California. So the California Berkeley Research Laboratory, they treated the first patient. The first Proton Center, so kind of like what Leo's been talking about where I work, where it's not a research lab, we built a facility dedicated to treating cancer patients, opened at Loma Linda University in 1990. And the reason that the first patient was treated in 54 and you didn't have a full dedicated Proton Center until 1990 is because there still were advancements that needed to be made in diagnostic imaging. So if you're going to stop a subatomic particle inside of a body, you have to be able to really see inside that body and see what's along the path the proton's traveling. And CAT scan wasn't really readily available until the 70s and MRI until the 80s. And so those two types of diagnostic imaging help us be able to see where the proton's traveling to ensure that we're able to stop that proton inside cancer cells. So Loma Linda opened in 1990, and then I mentioned that the Oklahoma Proton Center opened in 2009 as the 6th Proton Center. So there were 5 centers from 1990 to 2009 before Oklahoma Proton Center, but then there's actually been 40 Proton Centers that have opened over the last 16 years.
Wow.
But it's still not as widely available as you might imagine, Brian. I think if you look at the map, for example, where we are at Colorado, the access to proton therapy is very limited.
There's not a proton center in Denver. And again, it's just that really just has to do with the cost. And it takes a lot of times it takes a big charitable donation to help subsidize the cost of the facility. Or you have big academic centers like MD Anderson, Mayo Clinic, Harvard, Johns Hopkins that have proton centers, and they're using their endowment to help fund those projects. But it's hard for just like a community hospital to afford to put in 40, 50, 60 million dollars of medical equipment.
Yeah, it is crazy, and I think it's also like making it harder to market at the same time. It's like a lot of stuff that before we dive into that, David, would it be possible for you to also sort of talk a little bit about like what is the kind of like the outlook and how does that compare? What types of cancer does proton actually treat well, and what do you see? You're the frontier, and just I know this is a very touchy topic, but I hope I want you to give people some hope.
Yeah, so we treat any solid tumor where radiation is potentially a part of the treatment. So that could be prostate cancer, breast cancer, lung cancer, head and neck cancer, esophageal cancer, brain cancer. So there's a lot of different types of cancer that we treat. But the best way to think about it is the cancer in a specific location, and is it a solid tumor? Because then you have a target that you can deliver that radiation at.
Yeah, it's really cool, Brian. They have, like the way I don't know what is those like place called you guys have on the studio. Like, it's really cool to see the whole setup. Like like how precision it is. Like you are able to stop literally the exit dose at exact where you need it to be with all this.
Yeah, I mean think about that. You're taking a proton particle and you're accelerating it to 2/3 the speed of light. So that's 120,000 miles per second. And at that speed, a proton will travel about 1 foot into the human body before it stops. But we can slow that proton down using what's called an energy selection system. So that proton will travel through some material to slow it down before it gets to the patient. And we can know precisely how fast we need that proton to travel such that we have a margin of error of a centimeter. Meaning if we say, that's the width of a human hair. So if we say we want the proton to stop here, starting at a speed of 2/3 the speed of light, 120,000 miles per second, we can cause it to abruptly stop within a centimeter of where we want it to stop. And then we're literally delivering billions of protons into the body to hit all of the cancer cells, and those protons are damaging the DNA of the cancer cells, and it prevents those. It either kills the cancer cell or prevents it from replicating.
Yeah, isn't it crazy like how a lot of people actually are unaware of this technology and doesn't even know that it's available for them. David, can we maybe shift the gear a little bit? I want to kind of talk a little bit about the marketing kind of in proton therapy. You know, like we don't really know the medical field. A lot of people don't. So could you give us kind of a basic breakdown of what is the marketing look like for you? Because I know you have like the referral from the office visit, and then you also have can you give us like a little bit breakdown on that, and then we can dive a bit more into that?
Yeah, so we treated about 700 patients last year. So these are our customers, or the patients that we're treating. When a patient comes for treatment, they're going to be there for an average of about 5 weeks. So they're getting radiation every single day, every single work day or business day for 5 weeks. Probably about 60 to 70% of those patients are referred from other physicians. So it may be a urologist or a surgical oncologist or a medical oncologist or a primary care physician. They're referring the patient to the facility. But then 30 to 40% of those patients are self-referred. So that means they're calling the center themselves. They've done their own research. For whatever reason, their doctor, who maybe works in another facility, or they're out of town, didn't bring up proton therapy or our facility as an option. And that's where the advertising comes in. It's, okay, so if we're going to have, let's call it 250 patients a year that are going to self-refer, we have to figure out how to educate those patients on the fact that A, we exist, and B, proton therapy might be the right option for them as a cancer patient.
And for those guys, you know, I'm curious for the self-referral, have they usually heard about proton therapy before? I mean, or are they just doing their own research online and kind of come across it? Like, do you find that when they first get in touch with you, it does require a big part of education, or are they already pretty aware of it?
So it's interesting. So we do a survey of our patients, and when they finish up treatment, and one of the questions we ask is, how much did you know about proton therapy before you reached out to us? And so, or I think actually it's before you were diagnosed, meaning you got diagnosed. Did you know a lot about proton therapy? Had you heard of proton therapy, but you didn't know a lot, or you had not heard of proton therapy? For us, the respondents are about a third. So about a third say, I knew about proton therapy when I got diagnosed, and I knew a lot about it. I had heard of it, but I didn't really know that much about it. There's another third, and then the last third, they said, never heard of it. So I guess the point is that we kind of have these different cohorts of patients that we have to treat a little bit differently with our messaging.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And then in terms of the referrals, I know you mentioned the physician referrals could be 60, 70%.
Yeah.
Are you getting referrals from across the nation? I mean, is it the kind of thing where people are traveling cross country to come there, or is it mostly local physicians, hospitals, specialists that are going to be referring patients to you guys?
So we used to have more patients come from out of state when we were just one of 6 proton centers. Now that there's 45 proton centers, we don't get as many, but we definitely still get patients. I mean, we're in Oklahoma, so we get patients from Kansas, Texas, Arkansas, and every once in a while we'll get kind of a random patient from another part of the country that either has a connection to Oklahoma or was calling around and felt like we offered the best customer service. But I would say that the out-of-state patients, most of those are self-referred, meaning a physician didn't refer them, they found us. So the physician referrals that we get are mostly in Oklahoma City metro.
Okay.
David, can you talk a little bit about physician referral? Like, are there any marketing leverage you can do to influence that at all, or that just literally insurance dictates? I don't know. I'm just curious.
Um, so I do think that the marketing helps with physician referrals, because I think if a patient, let's say a patient walks into a doctor's office and says, "Hey, I want proton therapy," that could turn into a physician referral. And maybe if that patient
Mm-hmm.
hadn't walked in firm that that's what they wanted, maybe the physician would have tried to push them towards an alternative type of treatment. So yeah, the marketing, it's not just applicable to the patients that self-refer, it's applicable to patients that are physician referred as well. We want
Are you guys
patients
doing
talk.
anything?
Yeah.
Are you guys doing anything to influence the doctor's decision?
Um,
Like,
I think
have them
the be-
recommend you more, like visiting
yeah,
office, stuff like that?
for sure. Yeah. I mean, the best thing that we can do is educate doctors on the fact that we're there, and also provide good customer service to their patients, and good customer service back to them. I mean, a lot of the doctors who refer patients to us are going to manage components of that patient's care during and after treatment. And so it's important for us to be collaborative, and we have a team that's dedicated to what we call physician relationships. And they're out in the community, taking lunches to physician offices, making sure that they get all the paperwork that they need from that patient's treatment, bringing those doctors to the facility if they want to see what's happening at the Proton Center. So absolutely, that's very important.
That's great to know. David, can we maybe just talk a little bit about what are some of the pain points for getting through, the patient with our marketing messaging? What do you see as the biggest challenge?
Well, I think the biggest challenge for us, well, it's probably two things. One, we're an independent, not-for-profit facility, and what that means is that we're not part of a big hospital system. So if you think about, most cancer centers are part of hospital systems. And so if a cancer center is part of a hospital system, a lot of the patients that they're going to get are going to come from that hospital's primary care physicians and that hospital's specialists. We don't have that. We don't have that built-in referral base. So all of our patients are coming from another network, another hospital network. And so that necessitates, again, us really making sure that the marketplace is educated on who we are and what we do. And then I think the other thing too is that because proton therapy is not necessarily as widely available, there's just a lot of people that either haven't heard of it, or if you have heard of it, it's so esoteric or foreign that you have no idea what it is or how it works. And for most people, like, radiation's radiation. I mean, you're not thinking, oh, well, I have to somehow differentiate between different types of radiation and then make a decision as a patient who has no education on this topic about what the best type of radiation is. And so figuring out how to tone down the message, like a complicated physics and engineering topic, so that the layperson can understand it, I mean, that's challenging.
That is really cool. So it sounds like what you were saying here is like the two challenge is obviously you guys are you know who you are. You're doing this. You provide. You're capable in doing this. But a bigger challenge perhaps is just simply the service itself. That proton therapy technology as itself, it's pretty much unknown or not as known to a lot of people as an option.
Not
And
as
and,
known.
and
And
with
so,
that,
yeah. And so for
go ahead.
us, we think of it that we think of our advertising as in three buckets. One is brand awareness of the facility. So just making
Mhm.
people know that the center exists. The
Right.
second, the second is education on proton therapy itself. So what do we do? And the third is what I would call patient success stories. So these are patients that have gone through treatment, had a good
Mm,
experience, had a good outcome. So when we think about our creative and the channels that we're going to use from a marketing standpoint, part of what we're deciding is, okay, is this just brand awareness? Are we just trying to get our logo and our name out there? Is it education on what we do? Or is it that emotional side of it with the patient story and the great experience and the great staff and things like that.
Yeah, I love that, David. I know we for a while were doing Proton Fight Club where, we highlight those fighters who
Yeah.
walk out there successfully. Will you kind of give a little bit ideas and background on that first?
Yeah, one of the things that we talk about in the field of cancer is fighting cancer. So that's a common narrative or theme as you're going through something like treatment. You're fighting off this disease. And so what we wanted to do was create a campaign that includes powerful imagery and powerful stories where we're presenting these patients as fighters. And so literally some of the imaging and video that we created involved patients putting on boxing gloves and us having like Rocky music or some other inspirational music playing in the background. And we take these powerful images and they're shadow boxing, and we do some cool editing with that. Or again, we maybe that's video. And so there's a voiceover of a patient talking a little bit about who they're fighting for. I'm fighting for my kids. I'm fighting for my husband or my wife. I'm fighting, just to because for my grandparents or whatever, whatever the why that they're fighting for, we would talk about that in this video messaging. And I thought, the patients have really latched onto that. We have lots of patients when they finish treatment want to do the Proton Fight Club photo where they put on the gloves and we take some really cool imagery. We created a Proton Fight Club website, a Proton Fight Club Facebook group where the fighters could join and celebrate with other fighters. And then we also do a luncheon every 2 weeks where we honor patients that are finishing treatment. Or another way to say it is that we're honoring these fighters as they get through the fight. And some of them are going to go on and they're still going to have surgery or chemotherapy or there might be other treatments, like radiation could just be a component of their treatment. But what we're doing is we're celebrating that small victory that's part of the bigger battle. And we do that every other Tuesday at the Proton Center as well. And so that's a really neat ceremony. The patients get a graduation coin. They get an opportunity to share their story in front of other patients and their families. But again, yeah, it's really just about honoring the fight and respecting the fight and celebrating the fight that the patients are having to go through.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I saw some of those videos you guys had on your site, and I think just video in general, it seems like you guys have some really good assets there. I think there was one I watched that was talking about, how from like a single drop of water, you get the protons you need, or I don't understand the details of it from a science, physics angle.
Oh, those were one of the earlier ones, yeah.
Okay, yeah. And I think it's just, when I get to this site, somebody who doesn't really know much about proton therapy, there are quite a few good assets on the site that really I think help explain it. And so I'm curious how you're utilizing those kind of off of the site. Are you guys actively running YouTube campaigns, Google, Facebook, or any kind of other type outreach campaigns? Like you mentioned, you have kind of some different buckets like brand awareness, success stories. Kind of curious how you guys are messaging those beyond the site.
So we do traditional broadcast TV, NBC, CBS, Fox. We do cable television. We do connected TV, so that's going to be
cool.
People accessing cable through like a YouTube TV. We also run some digital ads on Amazon. We definitely do YouTube advertising, so running videos that run before or during organic YouTube videos. We run paid social, and so we'll have videos out on Facebook and Instagram. We've done some stuff on TikTok. We've done some pre-roll and mid-roll on other news sites. And then we also do a lot of organic posting as well. So the Oklahoma Proton Center has a YouTube channel, it has an Instagram page, it has a Facebook page, it has a TikTok account. So a lot of those videos we'll do the paid advertising or paid distribution of the video, but then also put it out organically as well.
Cool.
Didn't we have a spot where you were doing like a Super Bowl in Oklahoma during the local time?
We did, yeah. We have bought spots in the Super Bowl twice before, just locally.
Nice.
And so that, that obviously hits a big audience. And we do a lot in sports because people still watch sports, especially like college football. We actually have a partnership with the University of Oklahoma. So we're an official sponsor of OU Athletics. University of Oklahoma Athletics is huge in Oklahoma City.
Nice.
And so we've had some athletes from OU participate in some of
Mm-hmm.
our campaigns. And those are mostly organic. And so a little bit what we're doing is we're leveraging the OU brand and the reach of these athletes to put them in videos, them coming, for example, to the graduation luncheon and volunteering there, doing a tour of the Proton Center, learning about proton therapy, and then we'll create some social media videos and clips from that. And then we also started a podcast called the Cancer Project Podcast. And with that, we're interviewing patients, we're interviewing doctors, we're interviewing researchers. And then we publish that on its own channel, so that those podcast episodes are on the Cancer Project podcast channel on YouTube and Spotify and Apple, etc. And then we'll cut down social media clips from those episodes. Again, maybe talking to a doctor or a surgeon or a medical oncologist, and cut those into little clips that we can use on social media. So we are. I would say we are video content heavy, and maybe more so, probably more so than any proton center in the country. I mean, we really put a lot of time.
I really think you guys are like at the frontier, honestly. I really love that. And I think, David, I love the fact that you touch base on those three, miles, and those three anchors that you guys will focus, the branding, the education, the product, as well as sharing the success story to validating the hope and, giving back to the community in terms of, success rate and all of that. And it seems like you also are doing really well in terms of, like your positive advertising. I hear TV, like the nice cushion to sort of getting that branding awareness and addressing some of those factors. But then you also, I remember right before I stopped working with you guys, you still do, even in Google, you have like even Performance Max campaign, some of those like Google account. I feel like it's like you sort of have this holistic layer that kind of address every of those three anchors that you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Leo, we've worked on Google search together for a number of years, and I think that's really set up our account to be really successful. You did a great job of getting us organized and making sure that we were or are leveraging all of the tools that Google has at their disposal, like for example, Performance Max. And I think that's that goes hand in hand with the video. I mean, the video is ultimately people are going to end up on our website, and so our website has to be robust. And a lot of the ways they end up on our website is through Google search, or organic.
And then address some of those some of those concerns, because I think I want to kind of dive a little bit about patients, right? Because we're looking at every year. There's only so many people getting cancer from Oklahoma City. We kind of have an idea on their lifestyle and what they're going through. And, I understand typically call is a big part of this. Could you tell us a little bit about like when someone talks to you guys, what are their concerns and what are some of the ways that it become a challenge to turn someone from actually lead to a patient?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, if they're out of town, it's just the travel component. We have a great partnership with the American Cancer Society, and they have free housing in Oklahoma City for patients that are going through cancer treatment. We also have a foundation called the Proton Pals Foundation, and that foundation will cover the cost of patients' travel expenses getting to and from Oklahoma City, whether it's driving or flying. And then insurance is a big question as well. I mean, we probably get about 80% of our patients approved for treatment, but this is a treatment that can cost $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. And so if insurance isn't going to cover that treatment, that's going to create a big barrier to access. We have to, like, if you're going to run marketing and you're going to invest dollars on marketing, you better make sure that there's as few barriers as possible for patients to then access your facility. Like, it doesn't do any good for us to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on marketing if then half the leads, we don't convert them to actual patients. And so those two things go hand in hand to me. You can't have one without the other.
And
Yeah, I
you
love
said
that.
about 80% you are able to get insurance to cover
Insurance
the
coverage,
treatment.
yeah. Uh-huh.
Wow. And is
Yeah, and so
that
the
that's 80% kind of after they've been qualified and everything, and then you guys, is that how it works? You guys will then kind of work with their insurance provider to get it covered.
Yeah, there's a clinical qualification process, so that's step one, and
Hmm.
then there's the financial approval process, which is based on the patient being clinically qualified. So about 4 out of every 5 patients that we believe are clinically qualified will then have insurance that will cover their treatment. If insurance
Wow.
doesn't cover, it almost always is a cost component. So they're saying,
Yeah.
well, proton therapy is really expensive, and this particular plan or this particular whatever disease site or whatever the issue is, they'll say, yeah, you need to do something else. We're not going to pay for proton therapy. But I mean,
Hmm.
4 out of 5 is a good rate, and that's a challenge with
Yeah.
every expensive medical procedure. That's not even necessarily unique to proton therapy. There could be an expensive surgery where your insurance is like, I don't think we're going to pay for this full thing that your doctor's recommended. We may pay for part of it, or maybe here's this less expensive option that we'd rather have you do. So that's always going to be a challenge for some patients.
Yeah. Yeah, the 80% is actually pretty impressive. I would have guessed
Yeah,
much lower. I would have guessed
yeah.
something like 40 or 50%. So
That
that's
I
pretty
would say
impressive.
when I started 10 or 15 years ago, that's probably where it was. But there's so much good clinical data out now supporting the benefits of proton therapy, and basically justifying the incremental cost of proton therapy. That it's easier to get cases approved.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I did
So,
have a question,
yeah.
just to kind of jump back to the previous one. Just thinking about, I mean, it's how much you guys are doing. Like Leo said, you guys kind of are on the frontier, not just on proton therapy, it sounds like, but even just on presenting and messaging a proton therapy, center through the website, through the video
Yeah.
content, through TV ads. Being a marketer, of course, I'm really curious to hear just how you guys measure everything, right? Like how you measure the effectiveness of your TV ads, of the local Super Bowl spots versus a TikTok videos versus Facebook versus Google search. Do you guys have kind of a master executive dashboard that tracks everything here? Yeah, I guess that's really the question. Like, how do you guys kind of, not just thinking about digital, but where you guys are spending money overall? How do you guys measure that effectiveness?
So in terms of getting in front of people, we're measuring the cost of that in terms of cost per thousand. And
Okay.
so cost per thousand impressions. And so we try to use that as
Hmm.
a metric across all platforms, whether it's traditional TV,
Yeah.
digital TV, the
Hmm.
static Facebook ad, a reel on Facebook, whatever it is. So that's kind of our,
Hmm.
okay, well, this is going to normalize how we think about the cost of doing something across all different channels.
Hmm.
We then, some channels you get a lot more granular specific metrics. So like Google search is a great example. Like you get a lot of information about what did a patient search for. You can marry that up with a call rail account,
Hmm.
do some call tracking, and really have a pretty decent sense of how effective your Google ads are in terms of converting to leads.
Yeah.
And then we do have a customer resource management system. So all of our leads go into, it's an in-house system that we built. So all of our leads go into this CRM. And so we're tracking the conversion from lead to consult to patient. We then also, when a patient finishes treatment or when they're getting close to finishing treatment, we will actually give them a marketing survey that has questions like, how did you first hear about us? Did you see a TV ad? Did you do research on our website? Um, did you talk to another proton patient? So that would be like patient advocacy type marketing strategy. Did you talk to another proton patient before you came here? So that gives us a lot of information about the patients that actually come to the facility. But yeah, I mean, we are very data driven for sure, and are constantly looking for
Yeah.
ways to be more efficient in how we spend our ad dollars, and also try to follow where, like our demographic tends to be older, and so we actually have some of the demographic
Hmm.
that still watches the local
Hmm.
news. Even though there's not that many people left that watch
Right.
the local news, we do. Like our you know, a lot of people get cancer at 50 plus, so that's going to skew heavy Facebook versus like a TikTok or even an Instagram. We're on TikTok and Instagram,
Yeah.
but maybe we're spending a little bit more money and putting a little bit more effort into Facebook. So we also have to understand where our audience is as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I know you mentioned something which was something Leo and I were chatting on is with call tracking, you know, especially with channels like Google Ads, like you said, you obviously can lean into all the measurability there. I liked your response though on just top line impressions. That's like a good way to think about traditional media, digital media.
Yeah.
But then on these channels where you can get crazy with tracking, you can see the keyword that people, you know, call from. I'm curious if you guys favor like a phone lead or a form fill lead, or if it just, to you guys, it's kind of the same.
No, for sure.
Curious if
No,
you have
for
an idea.
sure. Yeah. So for sure, a phone lead. And as we've assigned, like, for example, value to a conversion on Google search, a phone lead is 4 times as valuable as a form fill.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So,
Yeah, because you got to think
yeah,
about, Brian, this is like a very high involved service, right? You're
yeah,
literally deciding your life, you know, and I
Yeah.
think people need a lot of hand holding, and it's also something we don't really talk a lot, and we couldn't, because it's a very emotional topic as well, right? I mean, you're dealing with someone who is faced with fear, you know, and they just really need help. So I think
Yeah.
phone call is a big part of the communication channel, and be able to, I love what you're saying, David, like, you know, it sounds like a lot of, you know, high level data, but also looking at qualitative data just to give some ideas on what works, and, you know, what is like, you know, what you're seeing in terms of messaging side as well.
yeah. I think the digital footprint's great, and you can get a lot of information that way. But sometimes you actually just need to talk to your customer
Hmm.
and get a sense
Yeah.
for how they think that they got to your facility, because that's also very relevant too.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. David, I really want to thank you a lot. I know we are coming closer to, can't believe it's already like 40 plus minutes into this. It's been really insightful, lots of great information. I think this episode not only is gonna help folks understanding a little bit about what's behind the medical world and what people have to do for the marketing side, right? But I also,
Yeah.
more importantly to me, and sure probably Brian feel the same way, like we want to also tell folks about proton therapy as an option, you know, for cancer treatment out there. It's another tool that we can have to treat patients and to help fighting this war here. I want to leave with sort of something more of a personal question as a last question, and like, how did you actually view yourself landing into working in this space, and kind of like what does the work mean to you in this case?
Well, first of all, I love my job, and I can't imagine not working in oncology at this point. I mean, the opportunity to intersect with somebody that's going through potentially, or a lot of times, the hardest thing that they've ever gone through, and feel like we're offering a service to them that's really beneficial and helps them get through this battle that they're having to fight. It's incredibly rewarding to work in this field. Um, I have an MBA by background, so I've always been on the business side, and just started as a business analyst at the Proton Center in Oklahoma City, and then in 2019, that was in 2010, and so in 2019 had the opportunity to actually partner with 2 other individuals and buy the facility, and so I'm an owner operator now, and so that's been neat, and but it's something that I'm incredibly passionate about, and just we do it because of the patients, and that's why we will always do it. That's why we should do it. And we want the patients to have a great experience. And part of the reason that we market is we feel an obligation to make sure that somebody who's going through cancer treatment knows that our facility exists.
I love that. Brian, any last word before we close it out?
No, I don't think I have any kind of final word. Yeah, you know, David, I really appreciate you joining, and like I know Leo knows a little bit about proton therapy, having worked with you, but it was really enlightening for me to hear about it, you know, and even just to be aware of it, like you said. And so, again, yeah, thank you so much for joining and yeah, teaching me a lot about what goes on there. And the personal journey you just shared, I was wondering that at the beginning too, how you got into it. So that's a fascinating story, and awesome that you're an owner-operator too. I mean, that's really impressive, and it seems like you guys are doing great work there.
Yeah, well, thank you,
you are a role
Brian,
model.
Leo.
You're inspiring to all of us.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for having me on.
We appreciate you, David.